All right, here we go. All right, I'll just give people a minute to join before we get started. Okay, everybody, give folks a minute to join before we get started. Okay, everybody, we'll get started in just a minute. All right, giving people a minute to join. Get started here in a minute. Hey, everybody. All right, y'all, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I am Lola, Comms Director with Faith in Texas, and we wanted to just come to you today to give a brief update on everything that's going on the ground here in Dallas with everything that has been transpiring over the last week and a half, especially the last few days. We want to make sure that we are hearing from our trusted voices as much as possible. So we've got Jasmine Crockett, a Dallas-based lawyer here who has been working tirelessly to defend and protect the protesters who've been exercising their rights here in Dallas. And so we're going to just talk to her and hear what's going on. We've also got Faith in Texas Director of Organizing, Nife, and we're just going to have a quick conversation, make sure we get everybody updated so you know from people you can trust what's going on and what our plans are to move forward. So Jasmine, I want to go ahead and let's just dig in. Let us know what we've got going on.
Yeah, so as everyone is aware, first of all, thank you, Faith in Texas, for all that you're doing. Let me just kind of start there because people don't understand that there's so many different roles that we need people to kind of step in and play in situations like this. We've got to make sure that we are organized on a level that goes beyond just kind of showing up and protesting. But we need to make sure that there are allies to any movement and making sure that they can kind of do other things. And Faith in Texas is one of those organizations that's leading the way. So I do want to thank Faith in Texas for everything that they're doing and that they will do. So basically, the arrests have slowed down. Thank God.
Yes.
But I want, I guess I can jump in and I wanted, it's going to be kind of out of order, but I want to start with the bridge situation.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's kind of the one that really had the most eyes on it, so to speak. And it's also the most confusing. I want to start with the bridge. So I don't know how many people are on the bridge. I'm hearing around 600 to 700 people. And long story short, there's power in numbers. Okay, so when everything happened on the bridge, I started receiving phone calls. I immediately jumped in my car, went down there attempting to show up to the bridge to hopefully have a dialogue that would include the protesters not going to jail. They would not allow me to get to the bridge. I was only able to get, I think that's Commerce. I think Commerce and Riverfront is as far as I was able to go. Sheriff's deputies would not allow me to go any further. And so I then pulled over to the Exxon station. When I got to the Exxon, I was just sitting there because they also told me I could not walk, which I needed to walk to the jail for sure if I could go nowhere else because I needed to turn in some orders to get some people out. As it turns out, the chief of police was actually stationed at the Exxon, kind of waiting to see when she would need to go up, if she would need to go up. she wasn't in the heart of it, but she was right there just in case. There were also 2 city councilmen there. They were absolutely begging and pleading, like, no, do not arrest these people. So I do want people to know that, number one, there were multiple people that were applying this pressure to keep the chief from arresting. I do think that ultimately the decision not to arrest really more so came because of the number of people. So I want people to know that there is power in numbers. It would have been almost impossible to arrest that many people at one time, especially with the inefficiencies that we're seeing in our jail right now. So I think that kind of is why they didn't go to jail. It's just because they really couldn't handle it. So that's that part of it. So people are now concerned about, well, I was arrested, I wasn't arrested. They don't really know. So to be clear, if you never went inside the jail, you were detained. You never were taken into custody. You were detained. With that, the chief did indicate to me directly that she intended to charge every single person that was on that bridge. So the next question is, what is it that she plans to charge people with? And that's obstruction of a highway. That is not a Class C ticket. People are facing up to 6 months in jail and or a fine not to exceed $2,000. I'll let you jump in if you've got questions now. So there's so much more, and I don't want to get caught up on the legal.
No, yeah.
I'm attention to comments on Facebook in case people have questions.
No, that's good, and I'm monitoring, and we'll kind of interrupt it as we go through. But I think this is a good spot to pause, and let's talk about, okay, if they're going to be charged with obstruction of a highway, they weren't inside the curfew zone. I think that was an added layer of everything that was going on, that they weren't supposed to even be there in the first place. Some people are saying that essentially the protesters were led into a trap by Dallas PD. With the specific intent to, essentially become violent with the gas and the corralling and their detainment. So how does that factor into these, charges that now the chief is trying to press against these peaceful protesters?
Yeah. So while she is called chief of police, that's the name of the position. The head law enforcement agent for Dallas County is technically our district attorney, period.
Yeah.
So she leads that department. But as far as law enforcement agent, the top honcho is the DA. So she can file all she wants. At the end of the day, the DA decides whether or not he will proceed on those charges. And so my team, which, I had to bring a ton of lawyers in to help me. I never saw this becoming the big issue that it's become. I normally volunteer to assist protesters. That's nothing new. The new part of this is that there's so many arrests that have been made. So at this point, there are people on the team. We've got over 30 lawyers, and their job is going to be to sit down with the DA. So while she says she's going to file, that doesn't mean that the DA is going to accept. If the DA does accept the charges, we're fighting it all the way to the end. What you bring up is basically the potential of a defense of entrapment. It's classic entrapment. It's not a defense that you use every single day, but we've got tons of video footage, and we've got tons of testimony, and I'm sure there's also body cam footage that would support the fact that the protesters were marching and then they were directed to go a certain way and they were told, don't stop moving. In fact, I believe at least one person has told me that they were actually trying to head back to their car to leave before the marching started. And they were told, you can't go, so you may as well march.
Wow.
And then officers were set up at the other end of the bridge. So they literally corralled them. And then there was nothing that should have warranted the use of any kind of force or any types of tactics to control the crowd whatsoever. In fact, that's how they got on the bridge, is because they followed their directions. So then to kind of put them on the bridge and then to use tear gas, I know that they are denying that they used tear gas. Based on, there is not one person that was on that bridge that's telling me that they weren't tear gas.
Yeah.
Not one. So the only people that are saying it are the people that did it.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay. So speaking of our district attorney, where does Crusoe stand on this so far? Have you spoken to him?
So we've not spoken to him because we do want it to be in a very organized manner. And so essentially the conversation is going to include the specific people that we know have said, hey, advocate on my behalf. Right now we're at close to 400 people. That's including protesters from the beginning until now that have in some way either been incarcerated or they were part of the bridge situation. Some were incarcerated on the city level, some were on the county level, and then of course you got those on the bridge level. And so the conversation will kind of include all these separate incidents. I'm probably not best equipped to talk to the DA. I tend to be very critical and speak my mind. Yeah. So I do have
that, right? Yeah, we're always encouraging people to never stop using their voice, right? That collective voice and power is really what has gotten us here, and the progress that we've made over days, years, decades, generations has become because people have been choosing to use their voice, right? In a strategic way.
To double back on the piece on using our voice, I know for the past few days, a lot of people have been reaching out to us about how they can help. They have, recorded videos, audio and things like that. Is there a specific person they can kind of direct that information to support in those next steps in those conversations?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to set up a completely different email account
For sure.
at this point, because so far people have been emailing me and it's in the work email, and I don't want those things to kind of get lost in the shuffle of work. So I'll actually set it up today. If Dallas protest at gmail.com is not taken, then it will be Dallas and then protest with an S on the end, plural, at gmail.com.
All right. And if you send that to us, we can
once set up. Yeah, once it's set up, we'll make sure that we.
So long as that's not taken, that's what we're going to do, because it's been very difficult.
Okay. And we've got an email set up for people to share stories. It's share@faithandtx.org. That's for anything, but right now we can definitely allocate that for this, so we can combine that with what you've got going on and funnel that to you. So those of you who have any experience, audio, video, something that is relevant to the Dallas protests, again, we'll do your Jasmine Dallas protest at Gmail, and then share@faithandtx.org. So aside from just the bridge situation, we have the larger conversation of the protests in general. And so you just said that we've got about 400 people who have been detained in some form or at some level. Let's talk about what that looks like, because the dominant narrative would like us to believe that there's a lot of violence, looting, rioting, right? But we see the bookend list. And that's not the charges. And so let's just, speak to what they're being charged with, how many people have been released so far. We've been posting bail when needed, but a lot of people are getting out on PR bonds, right?
Absolutely. So big ups to Dallas County misdemeanor judges and the MAG judges that see through kind of the nonsense and are given PR bonds. There definitely was a rocky spot with a few of the MAG judges over the weekend that were giving anywhere between $300 and $1,000 bonds. Yeah, but overall, the majority of them have been PR, PR, PR. If for some reason someone had something else going on, they weren't getting PR. Literally, I had one guy, he had an old probation violation for a misdemeanor possession of marijuana. And then he had like the new charge, and his bond was $2,000. And I'm like, so one of the elected judges reduced it. And so it ended up being $60 cash, so that we could go ahead and get him out. So yeah, talking about the charges. So obviously we have seen looting occur. Like, I'm not going to act as if looting has not occurred. What I am going to say is that law enforcement is doing everyone a disservice, everyone in Dallas County, okay? Because they are arresting people and attempting to criminalize people that should not be arrested. That's the first disservice. The second disservice is that there are property owners, building owners, business owners that are concerned about damage that is maybe taking place to their buildings, inventory that has been stolen. They are concerned, right? And they pay taxes as well. Well, Dallas is failing them again because they're not arresting them. That's not who's getting arrested. Right. So the offenses are occurring, yes, but the police instead are harassing, abusing, and arresting people that are not committing those crimes that seemingly the vast majority of the community is concerned about. I don't think that the vast majority of the community cares that people are exercising their First Amendment right to protest, and they're doing that. I think they care about whether or not, oh my goodness, is something about to burn down? Is something about to be defaced? I think those are the things that they do care about. There are people that don't care about that either. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, I think if they said, hey, there's a group that we want arrested, I don't think it's the peaceful people that they want arrested. I think they want the people that they feel like are causing damage to property, because we care about damage to property, but we can be silent about the damage to the lives.
Right. Like, let's make sure that we're prioritizing the right part. Right. Let's stop. Go ahead, Nife.
And I said, let's get at the root of why this is happening.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Whole other issue, but at the same time, so you asked me what offenses. People are being arrested for curfew violations. So there's no rhyme or reason. So some people receive Class C tickets, which is what you would normally receive for a curfew violation. And so they were taken over to the city jail. We could easily sign them out. As soon as they're in, we can sign them out. End of story. They also arrested people for violation of emergency management control plan. Okay. Long story short, the equivalent of this is, first of all, this curfew violation. But the equivalent is the fact that the governor put in place certain shelter-in-place orders, right? That was part of an emergency order. The county judge put that same thing in place, and our city mayor put that in place, right? So technically, people could have been jailed up to 6 months for violating the shelter-in-place orders, right? This did happen with 2 minorities out in Laredo, I believe. The governor, in an attempt to save Shelley Luther, said, no, people should not have been going to jail for violating my order. I'm going to rescind that, okay? Mm-hmm. So I'm bringing that up to say that the mayor is the one that put this emergency plan in order. Technically, he can rescind what he did as well. If anybody wanted to ask the mayor his opinion on doing that, he could technically rescind. And if he rescinds, then none of those people can be prosecuted. Okay. So we have a couple of ways to avoid prosecution for those that basically have curfew violations. The DA can do something, and also the mayor can suck the wind out of that as well. because he put that in place. And so there were people that were arrested the day before the bridge because of curfew violations. They were out past the 7 o'clock hour and they were kind of in the downtown area. They still were peacefully protesting, but they decided we need a way to kind of lock people up. So that's what they did. Other people, before the curfew went into effect, were getting obstruction of a highway, which is what they're trying to charge everyone on the bridge with. A lot of video footage that I saw, they weren't they weren't in the highway or in the roadway, or they were on the sidewalk,
Right.
being jumped from behind by law enforcement. So, they were getting that. They were then giving some people Class C tickets for pedestrian in a roadway. So, I mean, it's just kind of all over the place, but consistently, they were starting to charge them with rioting. So rioting, obstruction, pedestrian in a roadway, violation of emergency management plan, and curfew tickets. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Obstructing the highway.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's pretty much what everyone was getting or has been getting. The offenses we would expect to see if we were talking about looting would be burglary of a building. It would potentially be arson, theft, criminal mischief. Those would pretty much be the offenses.
Right. And looking at the booking list, there's none of that. So very interesting, and that's why we want to make sure, again, that we're amplifying our trusted voices and letting the community know exactly what's going on, because, the narrative would have us to believe that all these people are, out here destroying property, burglarizing, et cetera. But if that were actually the case, we would see that on these lists of charges. So,
and I'll also say that most people don't realize that literally if you spit on an officer, it's a felony of harassment of a public servant. So when we're talking about the use of force that law enforcement is deciding to use, right? The question is, what is it that prompted that? Because there should be some sort of trigger or prompt. Mm-hmm. We're not finding that people are being arrested for assault on a public servant, harassment of a public servant, things like that either, which would kind of say, if somebody threw something at an officer or tried to harm an officer, and then they use the whatever force they want to use to kind of gain control. We're not seeing that either. So I'm not saying that it's not happening. I can say that I've not seen it, but I have seen the looting and people aren't showing up on the jail list. So it doesn't mean it's not happening, but I can tell you that they're definitely not arresting people for that. Oh no.
I think we might have lost Lola there. But I think we were the theme of the conversation was really around
Welcome back.
Oh, welcome back.
There we go. Gotta love internet. All right.
I think we're
talking, Jeff.
Misinformation right now.
Yeah.
And we're talking a little bit about kind of the narrative that's been shared out there of, it's only been the looters or folks committing crimes that are being arrested and all that stuff. But it seems like it's the peaceful protesters that are being criminalized in this situation.
Yep.
And we need to continue to, amplify that as what is actually going on.
Aren't showing up on the jail list. So,
yeah.
And
no, I absolutely agree. I think that even some of those that did not want to believe that people who were peacefully protesting were being arrested, I think when they saw what happened on the bridge, it validated everything that we've kind of been saying. And it was playing out in a very public and live manner. And so now I think people see they're trying to take, there was a DISD trustee that was on that bridge. I mean, they got to see like, no. I know that the news is going to show you the violence and the looting. I get that. That's drama. Drama sells, but you're not seeing them in handcuffs. And we're not. And so I think that it's wrong. You know, I was reading a post that another civil rights attorney posted, and he said, if the looters and those that are, you know, committing the rest of the acts, right? If they are somehow damaging the message of the majority of peaceful protesters, like if the small faction is, and you're saying that that's ruining the entire message, then what are we supposed to think about the few officers that are out there doing wrong? What are we supposed to think about the whole? And I think that that's a good point. Like, everybody wants to say, oh, that's not everybody, and that's just a small part of it. And they want to make sure that they're like, don't do this to all officers, don't. But you want to do it to all protesters, right? Like, you want to throw the looters in to say that all protesters are bad, right? So we need to kind of think about that. Like, when you do that to us, why is it not okay for us to do it to y'all?
Absolutely. Especially like when we want to have the conversation about what violence is and who's actually inciting violence. I don't think there was any police officer that ended up losing his eye because he was hit by tear gas and a rubber bullet. So let's talk about our brother Brandon, who is now having to deal with the tragic ramifications of that police violence.
I will say that the arrests were something that I was prepared to deal with. I was not prepared to deal with someone who wasn't causing any problem, causing any trouble, becoming the victim of the very thing that he was out there to speak out against, right? And so it's there are no words. He is an amazing individual, because I think the first thing I would have done by the time I got out the hospital is I probably would have been trying to do some of the stuff that they think is ridiculous. Because at the end of the day, you've taken my eye. I mean, literally, my life will never be the same. I now have become disabled. Mm-hmm. My entire head had to be cut open.
Yeah.
And here we are, so many days later, nobody's come forward to say anything. Now, you know exactly who you are. And those that were around you, because you weren't by yourself, those that were around you know who you are. Mm-hmm. And granted, let's say that there were 5 of them firing. You may not know which one struck him, but you do know when somebody went down. Yeah. And you decided, instead of going over there to perform any type of first aid or anything, you didn't do anything. The only thing you did was block the ambulance from coming in to get him out. He literally could have bled to death, and it wouldn't have mattered. Like, the very thing that we keep saying is that Black Lives Matter.
Right. And
for some reason, you still can't hear it.
They demonstrate over and over again that to them, our lives do not matter.
Right.
And people value order more than justice.
Absolutely.
You know, because they shouldn't have even been using the rubber bullets and the tear gas to begin with.
No, they shouldn't have. This was 3 p.m., maybe one of the first days, maybe that Saturday. I think it was that Saturday. It was 3 p.m., Saturday. Nothing's going on. It wasn't even a large crowd. I mean, but thank God for the ones that were there, because I don't know that he would be here today.
Yeah.
That's who was performing aid for him. They never came.
Mm-hmm. And so what can the community do? How can we continue to show up for both the people that are protesting and, you know, who've been detained, You know, our brothers and sisters like Brandon, who have now been further victimized and brutalized for exercising their First Amendment rights. What do we need to make sure that our community knows, you know, how to support and stay involved?
Yeah, so they're doing this to keep us from doing exactly what we're doing, which is raising our voices. And I want to encourage everyone to continue to raise your voice. In fact, raise it louder. I will be here no matter what. However long, we will be here to fight for you, to protect you. And we're getting smarter about how we deal with law enforcement and the unlawful arrest that they're making on people. So I'm doing everything I can to actually keep you from going into custody now, especially since people were sitting for, you know, over 20 hours just to get a bail amount set, and then taking, you know, another 4 hours or so just to be released. So I'm going to be here. I'm going to fight to the end. We are in the process of trying to set up a defense legal fund, because once these cases are resolved, the records need to be expunged.
Yeah.
And that costs money, right? So everything within the system costs money. And my goal is to make sure that people that did not do anything wrong aren't left kind of holding the bag of the injustice, right? We're already holding the bag. Now you want to like tax us. And I don't want that to happen. So not everybody can be front lines and protest, especially in the midst of COVID.
Yeah.
And I think that. But organizations like Faith in Texas, they're committed to making sure that people can post bail even if they can't afford it. And so they do have a bail fund set up. So I would encourage you to consider donating there. Follow me, because we will have a defense fund set up. We're trying to see if there's a way to make sure that it's actually tax deductible without officially setting up a 501c3 right now. So we may tack on to somebody else's 501c3 so that people can actually get a tax deduction for helping out in this effort, versus us kind of just setting up like a crowdfunding or something like that, because then you won't have a tax deduction. So we're working on it, trying to think that through to make sure that that's available and an option. And then, you know, sometimes it's good just to have people there, especially if they're going to jail. It means a lot that there are people that are willing to show up and just kind of be that friendly face. So there's a place for everyone. I would encourage you kind of just stay in touch with Faith in Texas. Also stay in touch with myself on all social media. I'm Jasmine FOR 100. And you can follow a lot of things there, or even just follow my personal pages, which is just Jasmine Crockett on Facebook.
So, just to add on to that, I think another important piece is knowing your rights.
Yes.
Have the freedom of expression and the freedom to assemble.
Yeah.
Everyone has the right to carry their opinion into the streets, and I encourage folks to continue to exercise that right. You know, we have the protection of the right to freedom of assembly. Law enforcement must facilitate and not restrict a peaceful public assembly like we've all been taking part in. Freedom of excessive use of force. And police and nonviolent protest, police must avoid the use of force. So it's more than important now that we make sure that as these incidents pop up, similar to what happened on the bridge, that we're documenting this and we're filing reports with the police department to make sure that once these folks' cases come up, once we develop a comprehensive strategy to address this issue, that we have that documented, the history of what's been happening to folks. Another important right to name is that we have the right to medical assistance. If you're injured, you have the right to receive immediate medical assistance without delay. So I want folks to recognize that as they're going out in the streets, that you are protected under law to speak your voice and to be protected while you're doing so. And with that, as Jasmine lifted up, support other organizations in this space as well, support our bail fund, support volunteer efforts that result from this. I've been taking a few notes, and a few things that definitely stood out for me is that we need to be calling for the mayor to rescind some of these emergency policies. that are leading to folks being charged with these trumped up charges, essentially, and the DA, declining to prosecute these individuals as well.
Yep.
It also sounds to me like we need to call for investigation on how the police handled the protest on Monday and strengthen the powers of our Citizens Review Board to have oversight over the police department.
So yeah, so on that point, real quick, I do plan to have a very organized kind of effort so that they're bombarded at one time, where we kind of get everybody to file on the,
And my last piece is just on the larger scope of this. This is just an isolated incident, as we all know. And as a community, we really need to talk about how the dollars that are used to manage our city are placed in a way or dispersed in a way that truly meet the needs of our community. So how are we reallocating resources to community-based initiatives to address some of the systemic issues that we've been facing as Black folks? And that's some of the work that we're doing here at Faith in Texas. And I encourage folks who are interested in being a part of this effort to join us in reimagining what Dallas will look like when it isn't a tale of two cities, and a city that works for all folks that live here. And I'll end on that piece. Jasmine, is there anything else you think we need to lift up as far as demands that folks should be making in this moment as well?
Not as far as demands right now. I know there's a lot of people that want the chief's head, but right now, as far as making sure that our brothers and sisters that didn't do anything wrong don't continue to suffer from the injustice that has already occurred. I've got people right now, and actually, let me put this out there as well. Any mental health professionals that want to volunteer their services, please let us know, because there are people that have been traumatized by their arrest, and they're traumatized by just the overall way that they've been treated. I mean, even if your eye didn't get shot out, there are plenty of people that literally have bruises and were hurt by rubber bullets throughout this. There are people that are like, I just remember I couldn't breathe. So they're literally out there saying, I can't breathe. And then next thing you know, there's this gas that's causing them to have respiratory issues. So, I've heard some of the stories of just how some of these people were treated once they got to jail, including a pretty bad story of some young ladies that were put into a holding tank with a mentally ill woman who defecated on herself. And then she spread it all around the cell, and they refused to clean it. So, So, there are people, I mean, long story short, mental health professionals, we need you too. And we need you in a major way, especially since I've had so many young people that had these great ideals and just these bright dreams of like a better country. And then all of a sudden they saw like the underbelly of like who we really are. And so I've had 17-year-olds that were stuck in our adult jail. Yet one of the major points of things that I want to change about Texas law that didn't even have to do with these protests. But those kids, their lives have been changed forever. And so we definitely need mental health professionals if they're interested in kind of participating in the fight too.
Yeah, that's great. I just want to lift up, we had a couple questions from Facebook. First, to define PR bond. So essentially it's a personal recognizance bond, and that just means that they don't have to put up money, right? The simplest way to define it. Yeah. And then there was another question about, has anyone, let me see if I can see, the technology is not on my side today. We'll see if the thread loads. No, it's not loading. So any questions that are coming through the Facebook thread, I'll just make sure we get them posted in another forum, whether it's on Facebook, on Instagram. Let's see, here we go. In addition to county funding for our jails and courts that need to be diverted to resources to support Dallas County residents. I think we addressed that. Just stream through here really quick. Okay, I think that's about it. I'll look through and we can post any relevant questions, responses to any questions in our thread. But before we go, because we don't want to take up too much time, I know we've got the George Floyd Memorial going on. We want to make sure that we're giving attention to that. Is there anything else that we need to make sure that people know before we get out of here?
I just think that it's really important that if you're going to go out there and protest, make sure that you've got my number or some lawyer's number. I need to know when they're trying to arrest you so that I can do as much as I can for you. Not to say that I can't help you after you get out of jail, but the point is to kind of give you maximum access to minimizing any harm that they're trying to bring about for you.
Oh, here's a good one before we go. Has anyone asked Chief Hall what a peaceful protester looks like to the force?
I don't know.
Questions that need answers.
I don't know, but at this point, I honestly, y'all, my heart like aches because on one side we have a group or a segment of our community that says, wait a minute, we got Black everything, so we're good. Not true, clearly, right? Clearly, that doesn't fix it, right? So there are people that are like, what do you want? You've got all Black everything. And honestly, I could care less about color. What I care about is, and even when you look at these protests, right? These protests aren't all Black. It's everybody. What I care about is people that understand and stand in solidarity with us and will be reasonable. I don't care what color you are, because I'm gonna tell you, one of the biggest allies so far that I've seen that's elected in Dallas is Adam Bazaldua. He ain't Black. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care about that. And so it hurts my heart to have a Black female chief of police that isn't like denouncing any of this. She's not denouncing anything. She's not said, oh no, not on my watch. She's not taking that stance. And I'm like thinking to myself, I don't even understand how you think you got here, but for protest. Right. That's the reality. It may not have been a protest on the day before you were hired, but as the first African-American female chief of police for the city of Dallas, late into the 2000s, right? How is it that you don't recognize that the work that was done back in the 60s made it possible for you to be here? And the very tactics that they were using back then, you're now employing on people that are trying to make a way so that maybe there can be more women like you in positions like yours. Yeah. So it is frustrating. I'm trying to be.
No, it's okay.
This is the space. This is the space to get all of that out. And I think it's a well-needed perspective on this issue that we're not discussing. While it is important to name the things that we're facing in the immediate, these are some of the bigger issues that are impacting the outcomes that we're seeing. So similar to what you lifted up, it's not just a skin color thing when it comes to policing, it's a mentality. It's a system. It's an institution that keeps these results coming out over and over again. And that's what, as we as advocates, as folks on this call, need to always remember. And that is why we need to organize that at every level and be bringing up these issues at every level and continue protesting, because it's not going to end in one day. It's this started in the 60s. Before that, we have Frederick Douglass, and we had the Pan-Africans advocating for all these issues. So we need to, in this time, pick up the mantle and continue that fight. So I'm glad you opened up that space and are having that conversation, and yeah.
And ultimately, it is going to take everybody. It can't just be Black people out here, right? We need our allies. We need everybody to actually stop and listen and center those who are most heavily and directly impacted. So if you are not Black, if you are a non-Black ally, right, this is your chance to say, I'm going to stand and support you. I'm going to be in solidarity with you. I'm going to step back. So I am not in the center, and I am going to prioritize your experience and amplify your voice. That's what we need from our non-Black allies now more than ever.
Yep. And creating space for folks to, share these experiences, share these emotions where it was traditionally not allowed. I think to Jasmine's point, and to yours too, Lola, it's about accountability at the end of the day. And if something is broken, those who have broken it and reinforcing the same results need to be held accountable. And that's what we're trying to do. And allies should be in support of that and making sure that that message is always being censored.
Yeah, this is not just a Black issue, right? Like these issues really impact everybody at some level, and you can't ignore it just because you think that it doesn't impact you, because somewhere down the line, somewhere under the surface, you are impacted, full stop, like unconditionally, without exception, you are impacted.
Absolutely. I continue to have this conversation in my very gerrymandered House district. And people would say, Jasmine, how is it that you're going to go to this part of the district and talk about certain stuff? And I'm like, you know what? We've got to make sure that we're taking these conversations everywhere. That's how we get the change that we need. You can't say that criminal justice is just a South Dallas issue because the crime rate is higher there than it is in Highland Park. It's not just a South Dallas issue. It affects all of us. And for the people that thought, oh, well, George Floyd, that happened in Minnesota. Why are you guys protesting other places? That doesn't make sense. That's their issue in Minneapolis. Well, now you see, it's all of our issue. It literally, what happened in Minneapolis had the ability to trickle down and touch us all throughout this world. These protests are going on everywhere, and they're opening up wounds that have already been there, created by the policing culture in whatever local, city, county, state, right? And so the people that understand and join in as allies, that's how we get our message across. Unfortunately, as I was explaining to a friend of mine that I did not know was arrested, who is a white woman, I said, she finally told me she was arrested. And I was like, wait a minute, why didn't you call me? She's like, I was arrested on live. I'm like, nobody tagged me, like she's one of the few people that I didn't know about. And she was telling me about some of the conversations that she's had. And I said, so here's the deal. I love and I respect you so much because number one, it takes courage because you don't have to, because you have this thing called privilege, which thankfully you understand. But I can't have those conversations sometimes because people say, oh, she's just an angry Black woman. And so like, literally it's like, yeah, I don't hear it. And it's like, forget my education, forget my experiences, forget all of that. You just discount it and you're not open. And so there's so much that allies contribute to the movement. And, the thing that I would like to encourage Black people to understand is it's really important not to turn people off because, even yesterday there was a young lady who was irate there was a white gentleman who was on the bridge who was telling his experience in MLK Park. And she was like, I'm tired of y'all speaking for us. And I was like, you know, I mean, but we need allies. And I want people to recognize that. And I want people to really respect that.
Yeah.
Just like respectful of what we're experiencing. I think we need to be respectful that there are people, you know, it's sad because I felt as if some of the arrests that occurred to peaceful protesters were like, this is what you get for being out here with them, right? Because they were treating some of our allies just as bad. And so I feel like that was more like, this is what you get for, you know, go back to your privilege and stay away from them, which we saw that they used to do that back in the day, right? So yeah, that was the last I had. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I think that's great, right? Because even in allyship, there's a responsibility there and an accountability to make sure that you're not centering yourself. Thank you for standing with us, you know, but stand beside and behind and make sure that you're amplifying our experience and our voices. That's really crucial to true constructive allyship. And, you know, we need that. Everybody has to use their privilege, whatever privilege you have, whether it is inherent or whether it is hard earned. We all have different varying degrees of advantages. And the way we forge our path to a more equitable society is if we start figuring out how to leverage our own advantage on behalf of those who are underserved. And so, and coming together truly as one. And that's really important to us at Faith in Texas, and making sure that everyone feels like they can fully participate in the systems, process, government that, you know, governs our lives in an equitable and just way. So, you know, we appreciate, you know, people like you, Jasmine, who are on the ground and able to use all of your gifts and talents as a Black woman, bringing your full self to this work. You know, we can't do this without you. So, you know, we support you. We are happy to stand beside you. I want to make sure that, you know, people know you can donate to Faith in Texas. Our bail fund, thanks to the overwhelming support, like y'all, people are showing up and showing out. It's been amazing to see how those who, you know, can't or don't feel comfortable going to protest on the front lines are rallying behind. You know, I've seen folks making custom t-shirts, giving out astrology readings, doing fundraising bingo cards, like so many different ways people are trying to use everything that they have to support this movement. And that's beautiful. So I encourage people to keep doing that. Never be silent. Always use your voice. Make sure, y'all, that we are getting informed and empowered to vote, because it is not just about the president, right? Judges who, you know, Jasmine was saying earlier, were clutch. They came through in this. Our district attorney, you know, our chief of police, these are elected officials. And so make sure you know who and what is on your ballot, right? And we need to make sure that we are using our voice and our vote to align and bring in people who reflect our values and our vision for humanity. That's important. Have those hard conversations with our friends, our families, our loved ones. It's up to all of us.
So, and just to clarify really quickly, our sheriff who runs the jail is elected, but our chief of police is actually.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Wrong S. Like, that clarification.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to say, Nife, before we get out?
No, I couldn't have said that better myself. So on that point, I'm cool with us closing out here if we don't have any other questions.
Nope. So we'll be back, you know, soon with another update as needed. Stay plugged in, everybody. Stay well. If you go out to protest, be smart, strategic, be safe. And we will see you guys soon. Thanks, Jasmine.
Thank you.
Bye.